Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an updated forecast on those two possible tropical storms. The first storm does have a decent shot of developing, but the main one that we're going to be focusing on is Invest 92L, which is further to the east. That one has a better chance of developing, and the National Hurricane Center already gives it a 60% chance. Now, just before we get into the video, over the next few days we will be releasing some of the longer range videos from the 9th through the 15th. We're going to have a 7-day stretch of just long range videos. Starting off on the 9th, we're going to have your August forecast, then your fall forecast on the 10th, your fall foliage forecast on the 11th, the winter forecast on the 12th, total snowfall forecast on the 13th, first snowfall forecast on the 14th, and then your first frost forecast on the 15th. So we'll have all of those out. If you have any questions on any of those topics, just wait until that video comes out and then leave a comment on that video, and I'll be responding to all of your comments. If you have a question for this video, again, just leave a comment down below and I'll be responding to all of your comments. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. You can see it's actually quite quiet for today. You can see that we have a few air quality alerts in effect for the Northwest, as well as a little bit of Minnesota and Arizona. Other than that, we just have a few red flag warnings for fire danger in parts of Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, a little bit of Kansas and Nebraska as well. And then we have some flood watches in effect for northern Florida. But other than that, again, it's a very quiet day in terms of watches and warnings over the U.S. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 122 degrees in Death Valley, California, with a low temperature of 33 degrees in Peterson's, Utah. The highest rainfall report was in Fargo, Georgia, where they got 4.09 inches of rainfall, and there were no snowfall reports as of yesterday. Here's a look at the National Hurricane Center page. It didn't change too much from yesterday. The only thing that changed was that yesterday we only had a 20% chance of this developing within the next 48 hours. It has gone up to a 30% shot, but nothing has changed other than that. So the forecast looks fairly similar. The storm, instead of now being over Western Africa, it is now just west of Africa, and it's moving south of the Cabo Verde Islands. So it is moving fairly far to the west in a shorter amount of time than we were expecting, and that could help it develop and move through some drier air masses a little bit quicker. So we're going to be breaking down what's going to be happening, especially in the latter half of this video. We're going to go over a little bit more in depth of why these two storms could develop, and also what could hold them back from developing. The first storm, which is labeled Disturbance 2 on the National Hurricane Center website, has a 0% chance of developing within the next 48 hours, and within the next 5 days it has a 20% chance. Invest 92L, which is, again, the one that we are most paying attention to, has a 30% chance of developing within the next 2 days, and within the next 5 days it has a 60% chance of development. Just looking at what the National Hurricane Center is writing out for these two storms, I'm going to read them out for you guys. For the first storm, which is the one in the eastern Atlantic. They're saying that a large area of disorganized cloudiness and thunderstorms located a few hundred miles south of the Cabo Verde Islands is associated with a tropical wave interacting with a broader surface trough. Environmental conditions appear somewhat conducive for gradual development over the next several days, and a tropical depression could form late this week or early next week while the system moves generally west-northwestward through the tropical Atlantic. So that would be Invest 92L, and then looking at the second bulletin point for that storm near the Lesser Antilles, they're talking about a trough of low pressure located over the central tropical Atlantic continues to produce some disorganized showers and thunderstorms. This system is expected to move slowly west-northwestward, and some slow development is possible early next week as it approaches the Lesser Antilles. So we do have the threat of both of these starting to develop a little bit more, and I do think that both of these have a decent shot of becoming at least a tropical depression, and who knows, maybe even a tropical storm, and we're going to talk about why in just a little bit. Taking a look at the satellite imagery of these two, you can see that the first storm further to the left-hand side of your screen, you can see that that one looks fairly disorganized like they were talking about. The reason is because it's going over an area of drier air, which is situated right over here. If this can hold together somewhat, even just a little bit, and then move on the south side of the drier air masses, and then move into parts of the Caribbean, I think it does have a good shot of developing. But that is a big if. We still don't know whether it will be able to hold up through this dry air. And that is going to be one of the things that's going to really set the storm back. Taking a look at Invest 92L, much more organized out here into the eastern Atlantic. It has a much better chance of developing, and the reason is because you're waiting for this area of drier air to kind of die out a little bit, to spread out, and to not be as not be as potent. And as we wait a few more days until this storm is eventually into that area, by that point, it looks like that drier air mass will have broken apart and really won't be too big of a threat by that point. So that should help the second storm, Invest 92L, to develop a little bit better. And if you want a better view, here's the infrared satellite imagery, which is showing you how tall the cloud tops are. You can see that we don't have too much too convective of thunderstorms in through parts just east of the Lesser Antilles for that first storm. And again, that storm is not too strong by this point. But what we're talking about is not some rapid intensification that's expected. We're expecting a gradual development. Maybe it develops by 5 knots per day, where you add a little bit of wind speed each day, and then eventually you're up to that tropical depression or tropical storm status. But I don't think it's going to happen all at once. If it were to develop, it's probably going to happen somewhere over the northeast Caribbean. So that's going to be the main zone that you want to pay attention for. This storm to develop in. And then if we look at Invest 92L, which is back over here, that one also has some high cloud tops. That's definitely an impressive looking storm, and that could hold together, especially through some of that drier air to the west. If it can do so, then we're looking at very favorable conditions through much of the Caribbean and parts of the southwest Atlantic. That's a very, very favorable area of water, and just a general pattern, and just a generally good pattern for development. We're looking at very warm sea surface temperatures, high amounts of OHC, and the sea surface temperature anomalies are also about 1 or 2 degrees above normal. So these are fairly good conditions. If it were to be able to survive into that area, it would have a shot of developing quite nicely into a good, well-developed storm. Now, taking a look at the actual surface plot of this is Invest 92L. It's located at 11.1 degrees north by 22 degrees west, maximum winds of 28 miles per hour with a minimum pressure of 1,011 millibars. And you can see here's the west coast of Africa right here. So also here's the Cabo Verde Islands. So you can see it's kind of squashed right in between both of those as of now. Yesterday, if you watched that video, it was well inland, a few hundred miles inland of the African coast. So it has moved quite quickly by this point. It's probably moving at about 25, 30 miles per hour. So we don't know the exact movement because it hasn't been named. So the National Hurricane Center isn't releasing that data just yet. But I would assume probably 20, 25, 30 miles per hour would be a good guess as to how fast this storm is moving. Taking a look at the model forecast in terms of the track, again, here's the Cabo Verde Islands, and you can see that it's expected to continue to move west-northwestward into that general vicinity. So it's moving fairly gradually. We're not dealing with the storm kind of just moving straight to the north or just staying straight to the west. It will be kind of right in between there. And again, it's going to be a very gradually moving storm. It looks like it probably will slow down over the next couple of days just by a little bit. And then most likely by the time it hits the Caribbean, it'll be quite significantly slowed down, which should help it develop actually a little bit more. It'll have more time over the water, which will definitely help the storm develop a little bit more. Taking a look at the GFS ensemble model guidance, you can see that it's taking it a little bit more to the northwest. So instead of staying a little bit more gradual like what the other models were showing, somewhat like this, the GFS model is a little bit more aggressive, taking this to the northwest at a much higher clip. So it's moving much faster than what the other models were showing. If it were to do that, then that would definitely be good news for us, considering that it would probably be curving away and curving to the north into colder waters. It would probably die out. But if we're looking at what the other models were showing, where it's kind of more gradual, somewhat like this, it is probably on track to move somewhere closer to the Caribbean. So that could be a bigger threat. So if that does happen, we're going to definitely hope that the GFS model is correct, where it's kind of curving out to the north. That would mean it's really not impacting any land masses. It'll die out, become a weak storm. If it is moving pretty much in that west-northwestward direction at a fairly slow clip, then I do think it's going to be favorable for the storm to develop, and it'll also be moving in the path of the Caribbean islands, unfortunately. Taking a look at the intensity guidance for Invest 92L, you can see that over the next 24 to about 60 hours, but I would say more closely 24 to 48 hours, so 2 to 4 days, we're looking at this storm probably becoming a tropical storm, and who knows, probably by the next couple of updates on the National Hurricane Center page, so either by the 2 p.m. Eastern Time update, maybe the 8 p.m. update, they will probably put this up as at least a tropical depression, and who knows, by that point, it might already be a tropical storm, depending on what they find. As this gets closer to the Caribbean, as this gets closer to the Cabo Verde Islands, they will be able to send in some of their NOAA aircraft into the storm, because I believe they do have a few aircraft bases in the Cabo Verde Islands, and I'm not sure if they have one in Western Africa, but I know they do definitely have them in the Caribbean islands. So if this storm does curve a little bit closer to those islands, they will be able to get some reconnaissance data into that storm, which will really help the models figure out what's happening, and it'll also give us some good information on exactly how strong the storm is, because as of now we're just using radar and satellite estimates to figure out how strong the storm actually is. Taking a look at the OHC, the ocean heat content, you can see that the path that this storm is expected to take, it would actually be a little bit further to the north. So the path, somewhat like this, is going over some high amounts of OHC, especially as you're getting into this zone in the southwestern Atlantic with a ton of ocean heat content. If we look at that first storm again, it's right about here, and that would be moving somewhat like this. So it would also be moving into actually more favorable waters than what Invest 92L is expected to go through. So we're going through some very favorable waters in terms of OHC, and then also talking about the sea surface temperatures. You're looking at above normal sea surface temperatures all over this entire area. So pretty much over the entire lower half of the northern Atlantic, pretty much from the Gulf of Mexico to the eastern Atlantic, we have above normal water temperatures. So that's definitely going to help out the storm, even though it's not too much. It's not by a crazy margin like 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, but it will be enough. It'll be right around half a degree to a degree Celsius, which is about 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is definitely enough to have some impact on the storm's development. If we look at the actual sea surface temperatures, you want to see the storm stay within the zone for development. If it's above that 26-degree area, if you're that would be 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're above that yellow or orange line and you're in kind of that yellow and orange zone, that's where you have a good shot of development. Once you get into the greens and the blues, that's where the water temperatures are generally too cold for the storm to develop. So you can see that both of these storms are both going to be moving in a fairly favorable amount of warm waters. So these waters are right around 85, even closer to 90 degrees Fahrenheit as you get into the Gulf of Mexico and into the southwestern Atlantic. So these are warm waters, and that's all going to help these storms develop a little bit more. Now, there are a couple things that I think will hinder the storm just a little bit. One of the things is going to be this little trough which is digging in to the central Atlantic, which they were talking about on the forecast description and the forecast discussion. They were talking about the trough in the central Atlantic, and I did look at the models and try and figure out what was going on with that. That will most likely hinder the storm just a little bit, because you can see this little dry pool of air. By this point, the first storm is right in here, so it's in the Lesser Antilles. This is where the first storm is located by this point. and you can see all this dry air collapsing on top of the storm. And because of that, this storm might not be able to develop to as strong as Invest 92L might be, which is right here by this point. So you can see this trough digging in to the storm somewhat like this. So you have that trough right here, and because of that, again, this storm might weaken. We have all this dry air just compounding on the northern front of that storm, and that is really gonna kind of mess up the storm just a little bit, and that could definitely cause some issues with this storm. If we look at Invest 92L, one thing that you do notice is that the surface and the upper air low pressure system are disconnected. So you can see that the surface low is right here, but if we're looking at where this is actually being spotted, the surface low would probably be, or the upper air low would probably be somewhere in here based on the wind barbs. So we're dealing with a disconnected low pressure from the surface to the upper air, and that could cause some weakening within the storm because it's not completely stacked upon itself. So you would want to see the low pressure and the surface low pressure and the upper air low pressure match up a little bit more than what it is, and that could cause, again, some complications within the storm. Also, if you're wondering about wind shear, there is some high amounts of wind shear. This is showing you the wind shear anomalies. So the reds are indicating more wind shear than normal, blues indicating less. You can see that we do have more in through parts of the western Atlantic, but before then we do actually have a fairly favorable area of lesser wind shears into the central and eastern Atlantic. We do have a couple pockets of higher than normal wind shears. Again, that's going to be here and there, but for the most part, wind shear is probably not going to be the big issue with this storm. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Again, just an update: the August forecast will be coming out on the 9th, the fall forecast on the 10th, fall foliage forecast on the 11th, winter forecast on the 12th, total snowfall forecast on the 13th, the first snowfall forecast on the 14th, and the first frost forecast on the 15th. So that's the order of when we're going to be releasing these videos. If you have any questions on this video or on those videos, just leave a comment down below and I'll be responding to all of them. Thank you guys for watching the video, and please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.